Crayola tricolor pencils and Koh-I-Noor tritone pencils. What do I think of them? I'll give you a clue. Amazing. Come and take a look. Hello everybody, so we're going to start with the Koh-I-Noor tritone pencils, and this is how they arrived to me. So shrink wrapped, but some of them have shifted, which was a little discerning, but no worries there at all. There didn't appear to be any breakages, and I just ripped them open like a bag of chips, like I would any other pencil. And they are double wrapped, which makes the earth cry a little bit, but here we are. Here's a nice tin, here's your little paper of authenticity, so it's all very fancy. These are a nice slender pencil. They come with a very unique core, as they advertise. So when I managed to finally get into this treat here, I will show you. Oh, and there they go, flying off on their own. Such is the power of my strength. And come on past, Becky, pick up a pencil. Let's have a look. Okay, just put them back. There we go. Roll them over. Beautiful. So I've scribbled out this really amazing colour chart for you here. And I'm going to do 3 different ways of applying the colour down to the paper, because another point of this video is I want to show you how you can actually use these and not just have them as a gimmick. You can't really see the core too well with this colour that I've picked out here, but I will slow the video down and show you when I pull out one that's more obvious. But they have a very unique way that they've entwined the colours in their core. And I'm trying to show you this here, but it's not working with the yellow and the light yellow colour. One of the things I did notice with these pencils is the ones that don't have a lot of contrast in them. So this one's literally yellow on yellow on yellow, and it's there's not that much to see. It's almost like, why didn't you just mix the colour together in the first place? Because I'm not getting the streakiness or the variation very well. But when you see the ones with the more contrast between the colours, it starts to make sense. Now this colour chart, the first third of the block is what I've labelled burnished. So in other words, I've gone over, done a light colour, and then I've gone back over and I've burnished down. So I've used more pressure to see what happens when I do it like that. The middle section is just left with a light colouring, so just like a single layer. And then because they've given us a blender pencil in this kit, the third tri-section, if you like, of the colour chart is using the burnisher. Now I'm just scribbling this out because I found this to be a really hard and almost gritty burnisher, which made it not very enjoyable if you are one of those sort of sensory issue people with like myself, who doesn't like the sandy graininess feel with pencils. So it's not my favorite blender. I've used it for this color chart, and I will probably just switch it out for another one unless one day I decide that that's suddenly how I like to use a pencil blender. Not that I use them often anyway. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to speed the video up so that you can see all the colours get laid down, and then we can talk about the different variations in the full 23 pencil set here. Now just remember, one of those pencils is a blender, so it's 22 colours. No, sorry, other way around. 23 colours plus the blender. So let's have a look. So whilst you're watching this colour chart come to life, I just wanted to read out what Koh-I-Noor describes these pencils as. So their marketing says that these are a revolutionary pencil that creates extraordinary depth in coloured pencil drawings. The core is made of 3 different coloured leads that are braided together. So that's their signature design for these. Koh-I-Noor's proprietary braiding process ensures that colors alternate with minimal wrist movement. The colors chosen for each pencil are carefully selected for tonal harmonization and color combinations that are typically found in nature. The professional grade colored leads meld color as they lay down. A blender pencil can also be used to further smooth colors to create a complex appearance. Rich tonal effects can be seen in line work such as cross-hatching as well as shading in large areas. Now I do some different pencil techniques later in this video to show you how the different effects can be achieved. So we'll take a look at that in a moment. And the other point to point out here, if you pardon the pun, is that Koh-I-Noor tells us that the wood that they use in the pencils is California cedar. So the California cedar is used because it doesn't warp apparently, and they claim that the cores are perfectly centered inside the casing for even sharpening and are glued throughout to prevent breakages. I didn't have any breakages in the finished coloring page that I did, where I actually used a lot of these colors to lay down. I did do a bit of sharpening. I didn't even use that much of the pencil because actually their cores are really strong and they're not that soft, so you get a really good lay down. So you're getting a really good price point on these in terms of how much you can use these pencils. And definitely I didn't notice any breakages or anything uneven. And hopefully by this point in the color chart process you can start to see which ones of the pencils have got that huge variation in color. So those are the ones for me personally that I'm quite drawn to, because I think that they offer something much more unique for your coloring. And definitely the variety of greens that they've got for us here, definitely a good nature palette, and with a few extra colors put in. Now I'm slowing down here because when I came onto the browns, it made me realize that because the point holds really well, and the way that you have the beautiful natural variations in the colors, I was wondering how good these would be for doing hair. So here's my lazy girl attempt at just doing some hair or fur flicks, because with a nice sharp point you could create the illusion of all that variation in the fur or hair color with just one pencil. So that was quite exciting for me, and I wanted to do a bit more of that, so I went on down to the bottom here. So this is the tiger pencil that I'm using first, and then I'm going to see how it works with the other brown that they've given us. And it's just a really fun process, because 1 second you have the darker end of the pencils, so you're gonna then layer that on top where you want your shading, where your darker parts, and then you have your highlights, so it just comes together all by itself. So definitely if you're using these colors for hair or fur, absolutely a very, very quick way, especially if we're talking about something like a coloring book and you want to complete, in a timely manner, rather than, just never finish an entire coloring book. This could really speed things up. I've overlaid here a photo of the core from the website for these pencils so that you can see that braiding in a bit more detail. So as you can see, it's more like it's ended up with chunks of the pigments rather than just random spots or blurs together, and it works really well. So with these pencils, another thing to bear in mind is you don't have to keep them at a perfectly sharp point, because then you're limiting how many colors you can use. Whereas if you keep them slightly dull, you can rotate that pencil round and find a little bit more control with these, so they're not completely chaos factor. And this is the completed color chart. So these are all the colors that they produce for these pencils. And what I'm going to do now is show you some different techniques. So now that I've had a little play, it got me thinking, and I want to know how we can use these in our colouring books. So we've got a lot of greens here. Can we blend greens into greens? Now, spoiler alert, yes you can. And here's how I did it. Rather than using 3 colour blendings, so your dark, your mid-tone and your light, you can just take 2 of the pencils. So I've gone for the rainforest, which is the darker green, and the meadow, which is the lighter green, and I'm just using the different variations within its own pencil, and that's given me a really sophisticated looking colour in the leaf. And when I use these later in my Kirby Roseanne's page, that's basically the technique that I like to use, is using the darker shades and the lighter shade and doing some blending that way. But also you can use your other colour pencils to use as the darker tones to blend into your tritones, which then led me to question what other techniques work well with these pencils. So here I've shaded in a circular fashion, a straight fashion, and then cross-hatching. So there's no blending so much here, other than this side now, where I'm using more pressure to see what kind of effects we get from these. So circles, you get more patchy, it's less obvious. The straight line method, you're going to get more of an ombre or a blend, and the cross-hatching is going to give you more texture, really, as you can imagine. And then a bit of burnishing and whatnot on tops to really make those vibrant colours come through. So if you have these pencils, play with them and find what kind of techniques are going to work well for your projects. So once I realized that these pencils were not a gimmick, the Amazon fairy accidentally went online and purchased me the Crayola tricolor pencils, because obviously there's only so many colors with the Koh-I-Noor, so how do they compare with the Crayola? Now this is their signature line, so it's supposed to be their sort of top quality pencil production line here, and as you can see, we only have 12 pencils in this set. It's a very cute little tin. I haven't owned any Crayola pencils since childhood, so I don't really have anything to compare them to, other than just knowledge that these are obviously traditionally marketed for the child audience. But the signature line, I believe, they introduced with the adult colouring people in mind. So here's the packaging. Comes in a nice little cardboard sleeve. There are the little swatches on the back. But how do they compare, and can we use them together? So I'm ripping these open. Gorgeous tin. Why are they hiding that? I've got no idea. So unfortunately this is a tin that I can't throw away, so thanks for that. And then opening it like I would with the donuts. Chuck that out. Here we go. Then I got stuck. I actually couldn't open this tin. Like, for real. Like, I was wondering why my hands just decided not to work here. I'm thinking it's got to be a prank. It's got to be just a beautiful tin that you can never open. I mean, I'm really fighting with it here. And eventually I will give up, and I had to resort to extreme measures. And here it is. A ruler, and I had to literally jimmy and pry that open to get at my pencils. It was torture, but here they are. Wow, big reveal. So hopefully I've loosened that. There we go. Woo. Okay, so a nice range here straight away. You can pretty much see that you've got the whole rainbow coloured. The mandatory rolling in the tin, very cute. And then examining the core, they don't have the same core finish, and as you can see from the unevenness, they are a little bit wonky in the barrel. But you know, you've got to look at the prices of the two to compare. It wouldn't be fair to compare Crayola to Koh-I-Noor. However, these pencils were pretty good as well. So here I'm going to go out and swatch all the colours for you. The only difference being I'm not going to use the burnisher pencil. As I mentioned, I didn't particularly enjoy it. I want to try these pencils later on with my own burnisher pencils, but I usually just hard burnish with the colour anyway. So in these swatches you're going to see just a light layer, and then you're going to see the harder pressure burnishing just to see what that gives us. As of today, I couldn't find any information about these pencils on the Crayola website. Did have a good look, couldn't see anything, so I had to go back to the Amazon listing which I purchased these from to see what they're saying. They describe their core as marbleized. Now, looking at one up close in front of me now, it's very much like you've taken your colours, you've tried to blend them together and you've given up. You know, so it's very patchy, it's very random, but you know that's fine. That's how they work. That's what they want. And again, you've got to remember we're talking about $1 a pencil at this price point. So comparing the two pencils together, there's definitely more contrasting tones within the Koh-I-Noor and much more subtle color changing in the Crayola. I think the Pebble Blue had the most going on for it, really. So definitely I wouldn't start with these. I would use these, the iris petals, very nice as well. I would use these like I'm going to complement the color line in the Koh-I-Noor. There aren't really any like-for-like comparisons in terms of the color trios put together here, but holding them up side by side with a similar kind of color, as you can see, like I said, the tritones have much more variation in their colors chosen. The Crayola is much more similar, but you can see here how the cores are quite different. So the wooden one is the Koh-I-Noor with the braided, and the black barrel is the marbleized Crayola. And they do also recommend for the Crayolas that you roll the pencil whilst you're colouring so that you can access all the variations. And again, comparing, you know, very difficult to see with the yellow Crayola there because the colours are just too similar. But hopefully that gives you an idea. In terms of the cores, the Koh-I-Noors are encased, they claim to be centered and glued in, and the Crayolas are a little bit off. So for this little scribble here on the right that I'm doing, I'm trying to roll the pencil a bit more as I scribble down, and that is definitely giving me much more variation. I'm definitely accessing all those colors at a more immediate shift rather than a subtle blend, and the same technique also works really well with the Koh-I-Noor, even though they say that because of the braiding you don't need to use too much wrist movement. So definitely use that technique for the Crayolas, and then have more control over how you use the Koh-I-Noors. But you can probably see from these scribbles that both sides, even though they're different colors, they are showing that you can cycle through the range of colors within them. And for this one final test, I just want to do a little bit of blending here. So this is slightly sped up. I'm not that whizzy, but I'm just going heavy to light pressure with the Crayola, and then coming in and blending into the Koh-I-Noor, and they do blend together nicely. What I would say is it definitely feels like there's way more on the Crayola side that may as well just be regular pencils. I mean, there's such little color shifting in them that you know, you're really not going to see it too well. But then I wanted to just try different colors into different colors, because you can see that I've done the dark pink into the light pink there, but now I'm doing a blue into a green, just to show that they will play nicely together, they will get along, and then you can have much more variation. But if you had to pick one, I would just stick to the Koh-I-Noor because of the color shifting being so much more obvious with those pencils, and that is literally the point of them, rather than just a cute little gimmick. And this shot that I'm showing you here, I wanted to show how little I use these pencils. So the ones that are sharpened down, I used a lot in the Kirby Roseanne's picture that I coloured in. I used it on all of the background foliage and all of the rocks. As you can see, I mean, this is just a couple pencils with all that beautiful colouring. The tree trunks as well I used. I did bring in maybe a bit of a black pencil and just to enhance the shading just a little bit more. So I recommend that. Definitely throw in a bit of a shadow colour. But yeah, I mean, look, I've sharpened them down. They've not been disappointing and broken my heart because they've broken themselves. And I had finished that picture before I got a chance to throw the Crayolas in. But I do question how much I would use the Crayolas over the Koh-I-Noor. So here is some real-time footage from my recent speed video of these pictures that I've uploaded from Kirby Roseanne's Alien Worlds. And you can see that I'm basically just letting the pencil dictate the colour of those leaves and how much variation I'm getting with very little work. And I do combine this with a bit of a black pencil and, you know, a darker green, just for the shadows, basically, just to make the objects pop and not just blur into one giant mass. But they worked really well, and in some places I just used the darker green tritone to make the shadows itself and blend into the lighter green. And in places that I wanted just even more shadow, that would be where I would bring out a single pencil to do it. And I did the same for all of the bark as well. So all of those tree trunks, I'm just using the two browns together. And I think, yeah, no, I also threw in a little bit of green just on the trunks, just to make it a little bit more tropical and not just regular. And I was just so impressed with how this sped things up. A lot of these complicated colouring pages are very intimidating and daunting because of the amount of details. And then, you know, how can you pull out 500 different colours to try and get all the variation that you're hoping to achieve? And these pencils really are the answer. Which then led me to think, is this cheating? Of course it's not cheating, but you know, I'm letting the pencils do all the work for me instead of me meticulously picking out every section that's going to be a certain colour in the background, which, you know, could get quite tiresome. So definitely these are an incredible asset. And this is me going in with the black pencil here, so just a black pencil, just to deepen that up. And that's when they really started to pop and shout at me. And I knew I was on to a winner with these pencils. So I'm really, really pleased with how these came out. My concern is now that I want more colours, and I don't really feel that the Crayola can bridge that gap too much, especially if they've only got 12 colours anyway. So how can we get more? And I think if we just all bought them, that they would see a demand and maybe bring us some more colours. So yeah, shameless plug, but link in the description so that you can get your own as well. You can, but I mean, just look at that. That's like 2-3 pencils. Easy. So final thoughts. I've gone from thinking that these were just a gimmick and something that I wouldn't need, but for an affordable little set of pencils, they really do add something to your collection. I don't know what else to say about it. They were a pleasure to use. They seem professionally made. They seem really good quality. And definitely add them if you're looking for something a bit different or a new challenge to add to your colouring. A little recap again, because you didn't see me colouring those rocks, but I was really, really pleased with how the rocks came out. And as long as you follow the shape that you're colouring, it won't look wrong. Although I challenge you to use these pencils and try and make them look wrong, because they just look so good. I'll put a link in the to the video for this entire colouring if you want to see that sped up, on how I did that. And there's also a pastel sky video that you might like if you want to know how I did the sky for these pages. But yeah, happy colouring. Thanks for stopping by. If you are not subscribed yet, obviously I'd love to have you. So I hope to see you again. Stay safe.